When someone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I almost always answered, I don't know how, but I want to change the world. At that time, that seemed pretty lofty, but I kept that notion in mind because I have a passion for helping others, and I've found as a school psychologist, I'm doing just that, helping to mold and shape the lives of students. I'm Brandy Dusky. It's nice to meet you. Just a little about me personally. I'm married to my wonderful partner, Ryan, and he's just that. He is a partner in life. We are a great team and we work well together. We have 4 kids between us. Tessa's 25, Aiden is 17, Cooper's 15, and little Ryan is 11. You're about to see a pattern here. Ryan is my second husband, and my daughter Ryan is from my previous marriage. So we have a big Ryan and a little Ryan. And just a smidge more, Ryan and I became grandparents almost 2 years ago. So Tessa gave us a granddaughter, Hazel Grace, with her boyfriend, Ryan. So we have a middle Ryan. Some hobbies that I enjoy are reading a good book or binging on Netflix. Those are both ways to settle and get out of the stress of the day and the work week. I am no Joanna Gaines, but Ryan and I have worked renovating the house that we purchased together, and we are currently working on building a house that we hope to be moved into before the beginning of 2022. Fingers crossed. Over the COVID summer break, we purchased a camper and did some quality family time at the lake with the kids, so that's been a fun endeavor as well. About me professionally, I am a school psychologist and have been for 12 years. I've worked at a few cooperatives within the state, most recently at LCNCK in Concordia. I was named the 2020 Kansas School Psychologist of the Year, which was a very humbling experience for me. I have also served on the Kansas Association of School Psychologists Executive Board. Since graduate school, I've served many roles on that board, most recently as the NASP delegate, which is the National Association of School Psychologists. Each state has 1 delegate, and I'm it for Kansas. I also serve on the local school board where my kids go to school, and where we live, not where I work. I'm serving my 2nd term, and I'm currently the vice president. This quote is something that I come back to time and time again in my work in schools. So when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. So in my world-changing endeavors, I strive to keep this at the heart of my practice. I want to ensure that I'm changing the environment and making the environment more conducive to the growth that I want to see, not expecting a student or a staff member or a coworker to mold to change to what I think it needs to be. I want to change the environment as much as possible. Looking at the multiple forms of communication used within my district, email, Google is something that is provided by the district. We use that for contact within the district between coworkers, but also that is a way that we can communicate with families. Our district also uses digital apps, so teachers primarily use Seesaw and Remind as ways to communicate with families about assignments and those sorts of things. Google Classroom is also used at the secondary level. I don't personally use those in my work with students, but it's a method that the school uses. Additionally, there's a school messenger that sends phone calls, automated phone calls, or emails, reminders of those sorts. We do still use the good old paper and phone call, sending flyers and notes home in the backpack, picking up the phone and making a phone call, or even scheduling those in-person or virtual meetings that may be necessary to meet with families to make the appropriate changes. The district also has a website that is pretty up-to-date, and they utilize Facebook, Twitter for making those announcements for different things. The thing that's missing that we aren't able to find or utilize appropriately to get that stakeholder feedback and engagement is something where we can get that information out there and then families or community members can respond. So we're looking at ways to get that engagement to use that way. In each of the resources, I found them very interesting, all for very different reasons, but how that information impacts my professional life and how I'm making introductions or can make me introduce myself as a new building leader. I have often thought about the best way to introduce myself because I typically introduce myself according to my title and role. I think all of the articles said that that was pretty traditional, but we're more than that. And in many instances, that seems to be appropriate when I'm identifying myself on a phone call, knowing that that's who I am and why I'm calling might be important. But it can also be intimidating in a meeting when I'm introducing myself and I say that I'm the school psychologist. Sometimes people get a little defensive or nervous. So I think changing up how I get to that point in many circumstances might actually lighten that mood, provide a more natural segue in conversation about where I want to be with families. Because my overall style is to disarm those fears and set people at ease. So though I haven't used stories in an introduction previously, I think using them or incorporating them into a more memorable introduction might be intriguing, something I'd like to try. When introducing myself as a new building leader, I think it's important to set a tone of calm assurance. That I want them to believe and know that I'm thoughtful and cool-headed and that I can be entrusted to lead in a kind and approachable manner. The district that I work in doesn't have any specific policies for communicating effectively, though I do believe that communication is an area for growth, both between school and home as well as within the district and even within the buildings. Sometimes I feel like we have so many tools at our disposal for communication, but we communicate less than we would if we were left with just a phone call or a conversation between people. So I think more effective communication is never a bad thing. Looking at the standard for the assignment and how the assignment correlated to the standard, very well. I mean, the standard was about utilizing multiple methods of communication, and the assignment asks us to integrate oral, digital, and written communication into a video presentation and making a good first impression, which I hope I did. Relevancy. In all of the roles that I professionally sit on, communication is key in everything. Being an effective leader relies on effective communication, making sure that you're listening to understand and getting your point across and not being overly pushy or dramatic, for lack of a better term, but making sure that you're effectively communicating with all of your stakeholders, not just some of them, whether those stakeholders be students and families or other businesses within the community. So effective communication is key as a leader in any form. My personal reflection, as I mentioned before, I have often thought about how to introduce myself that would be a way to soften that blow, because sometimes including your title can be intimidating. Having the school psychologist in a meeting or even the principal kind of gets those defenses up. And my personal style is to disarm those fears and set people at ease. So finding ways to do that without going down a rabbit hole of a story, I think is a worthy move. I want to try to do that. Personally, in less professional settings, when I introduce myself, if I mention that I'm a school psychologist, I'm often asked, well, are you analyzing me? So I think using a personal story or something to segue into that, like if it's even necessary to mention that I'm a school psychologist in that time, people ask, what do you do? So finding a way to get to that point, to kind of segue that conversation away from that awkward, no, I'm not analyzing you, and then there's a lull in the conversation. So making sure that I am memorable, but that it's not memorable for being awkward in the, I'm not analyzing you. I'm a school psychologist, but I'm not analyzing you. I included the references to those articles that we looked back at for the assignment. I appreciated this assignment very much, and I am looking forward to meeting each of you.